"Run," he commanded, and she did. They crashed through the hedgerow together, thorns tearing at his expensive suit. Behind them, Marcus heard shouting, the agent screaming orders, David yelling something Marcus could not make out over the pounding of his own heartbeat. Laura moved with incredible speed and agility, her long dress somehow not impeding her as they raced between rows of grapevines. Marcus struggled to keep pace, his lungs burning. "Where are we going?" Laura gasped, her accent more pronounced with exertion. "My car," Marcus panted. "North parking area, black Tesla. Can you make it?" "Yes," she said with certainty, and somehow increased her speed. They burst out of the vineyard onto the gravel parking area. Marcus's car was exactly where he had left it, and he thanked every deity he could think of that he always kept his key fob in his pocket. He yanked open the passenger door, practically shoving Laura inside, then sprinted around to the driver's side. The engine started silently, and Marcus reversed out of the parking space just as the first agents emerged from the vineyard. He floored the accelerator, the electric car responding instantly with smooth, powerful acceleration. Gravel sprayed as they shot forward, turning onto the access road that led away from the estate. In his rearview mirror, Marcus saw agents running for their own vehicles, heard the distant wail of sirens approaching. Beside him, Laura was breathing hard, her purple skin flushed a darker shade with exertion. Her wedding dress was torn in several places, leaves and twigs caught in her indigo hair. She looked at him with those impossible amethyst eyes, and Marcus saw gratitude and confusion warring in her expression. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "You do not know me." Marcus gripped the steering wheel, taking a curve at dangerous speed, his mind racing as fast as his car. "Honestly, I have absolutely no idea." But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. Something about her had called to him from the moment he saw her veiled figure walking down that aisle. Something had made him stay in his seat when he had planned to leave. Something had made him risk everything to grab her hand and run. He just had no idea what that something was, or what the hell he was going to do now. Marcus drove for 2 hours, taking random turns and doubling back several times to ensure they were not followed, before finally heading north toward the one place he owned that was not registered under his corporate name. The lakeside cabin had been his grandfather's, left to Marcus in a private trust that predated his business success. As far as anyone knew, the property belonged to a deceased elderly man with no connection to Marcus Bennett, tech billionaire. The cabin sat on the shores of Lake Tahoe, nestled among towering pines and accessible only by a narrow private road. By the time they arrived, darkness had fallen, and Laura had been silent for the last hour of the drive. Marcus parked behind the cabin, hidden from any potential aerial surveillance, and killed the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. "We should be safe here," Marcus finally said. "At least temporarily." Laura turned those remarkable eyes on him, and in the dashboard light, Marcus could see the full strangeness and beauty of her features. Her skin seemed to have a subtle iridescence, catching light in ways human skin did not. There was a delicate pattern along her cheekbones, almost like natural markings that he had not noticed before. "You have risked much for someone you do not know," she said quietly. Marcus got out of the car, needing movement to process what he had done. He had kidnapped, or rescued, depending on perspective, an alien being from federal agents. His peaceful, controlled life had detonated in the space of an afternoon. Inside, the cabin was dusty, but intact. Marcus had not been here in over a year, but the utilities were still connected on automatic payment. He flicked on lights and adjusted the thermostat, while Lyra stood in the doorway, still in her torn wedding dress, looking lost and beautiful and impossible. "There is a bedroom upstairs," Marcus said. "I will find you something to wear. The previous owner, my grandfather, kept clothes here. They will not fit well, but better than that dress." Laura glanced down at herself, and something like sadness crossed her face. David chose this dress. He wanted everything to seem normal, traditional. He thought if we appeared human enough, if we followed all your customs perfectly, perhaps they would let me stay. "How long have you been on Earth?" Marcus asked, curiosity overcoming his shock. 6 months, as David said. My ship malfunctioned during what you would call a research mission. I was studying your planet's biodiversity when my navigation system failed. The crash damaged my communications array. I have been trying to repair it, but many components are not available on Earth." She moved into the cabin, her movements graceful despite obvious exhaustion. Marcus found himself watching the way she examined everything with open curiosity. She paused at the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines, touched the stone fireplace with wonder, looked out the windows at the lake with an expression of peace. "Your world is beautiful," she said softly. "Different from mine, but beautiful." Marcus found clothes in his grandfather's old room, flannel shirts and soft pants that would be enormous on Lura's slender frame. When he returned downstairs, she was standing by the window, and the moonlight on her purple skin created an effect that was breathtaking. "These should work temporarily," Marcus said, offering the clothes, his fingers brushing his. Even that brief contact sent something electric through Marcus that he could not explain. Over the next 3 days, they developed a routine. Marcus contacted David through encrypted channels, learning that his cousin had been detained but not arrested. The federal agents were searching for Lura, but had no leads. David was working with a lawyer to secure forged documents, identification that might allow Lura to blend in, though David and Marcus knew the risk was enormous. Meanwhile, Marcus worked to make Lura look human. He drove 2 hours to a distant city where no one knew him, purchasing theatrical makeup, colored contact lenses, and other supplies. Teaching Lura to apply the makeup took patience. She had to cover her purple skin with foundation several shades too light, making her appear merely pale rather than alien. The contact lenses changed her amethyst eyes to a more mundane brown. A wig covered her distinctive indigo hair. "I look wrong," she said, studying herself in the mirror after the transformation. "You look human," Marcus corrected. "That is the point." But he understood what she meant. The disguise dulled her, made her extraordinary features ordinary. It felt like a crime. In the evenings they talked. Marcus learned that Lura came from a world called Thessara, located in a star system Earth's astronomers had not yet properly catalogued. Her people were explorers and scholars, sending small research teams throughout the galaxy to study and learn. They had been observing Earth for decades, but followed strict protocols against direct contact. "Then why did David find you?" Marcus asked. "Because I was dying," Lura said simply. "My ship's life support was failing. I had a choice: follow protocol and die alone, or seek help from the species I was studying. I chose to live. David chose to help me, even knowing the risk." "And you fell in love," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice neutral. Lura smiled, the expression transforming her face. "He showed me kindness when he could have been afraid. He risked everything to protect me. How could I not love him?" Something twisted in Marcus's chest, an emotion he refused to name. He changed the subject, asking about her world, her work, anything to avoid examining why the thought of Lyra loving David bothered him. Lyra, for her part, asked about Earth, about Marcus's life, about his work. She was fascinated by technology, understanding concepts that would have taken hours to explain to anyone else. She grasped quantum computing principles instantly, offered insights into theoretical physics that Marcus had never considered. "My people believe technology and art are inseparable, that the universe's greatest beauty comes from understanding its deepest truths." "My people believe in quarterly profits and market dominance," Marcus said dryly. Lyra laughed, the sound like music. "You do not believe that. I have seen your work. You build systems that connect people, that share knowledge across vast distances. That is art and truth, even if you do not call it that." On the 4th evening, a storm rolled across the lake. Marcus was gathering firewood from the shed when the rain started, cold and driving. He ran for the cabin but was soaked within seconds. Lyra met him at the door with towels, concern in her disguised features. She had removed the contact lenses, and her real eyes glowed in the dim light. "You should not have stayed out so long," she scolded gently, helping him out of his wet jacket. Marcus started to respond, to make some flippant comment, but the words died when he looked at her. She was close, closer than she had been since that first desperate car ride. Even in her grandfather's too large clothes, even with her skin temporarily covered in makeup, she was breathtaking. And she was looking at him with an expression that made his heart stutter. "Marcus," she said softly, "why did you really help me that day?" He could have lied, should have lied, but something about the way she looked at him, the way her hand still rested on his arm, made honesty feel inevitable.
The message came through Marcus's encrypted phone 3 days later, while he and Lyra were eating breakfast by the lake. David's lawyer had secured temporary documents, but there was a problem. Federal agents had tracked some of David's movements and were closing in on the general area where they suspected Lyra might be hiding. "How long do we have?" Lyra asked, reading the message over Marcus's shoulder. "Maybe 48 hours before they start systematically searching properties in this region," Marcus said, his mind already calculating options. Lyra set down her coffee cup, her expression calm despite the news. Over the past week, she had stopped wearing the disguise while inside the cabin, and Marcus had grown accustomed to her true appearance. He could hardly remember finding it strange. Now, her purple skin and amethyst eyes seemed like the most natural thing in the world. "I need to tell you something," Lyra said quietly. "My ship, it is fully repaired now. I finished the final installation yesterday while you were getting supplies." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "You can leave." "Yes," Lyra confirmed. "I can return home to Fisada. My people are expecting me. They have been monitoring for my signal." "But?" Marcus prompted, hearing the hesitation in her voice. Lyra stood and walked to the window overlooking the lake. The morning sun caught her skin, making it shimmer with iridescence. "I have grown to love this world. Your mountains and your oceans, your art and your music, the way humans find beauty in small moments. And I have grown to love you." Marcus joined her at the window, turning her gently to face him. "I love you too, which is why you should go if that is what is best for you. I will not be another cage, another person making decisions for you." Lyra reached up, cupping his face with both hands. "You do not understand. I want to stay. I want to build a life here, with you. But if I stay, I endanger you constantly. Federal agents will never stop looking, and my presence puts you at risk of prosecution, of losing everything you have built." "I told you before," Marcus said firmly, "that empire means nothing without something real to build it for." Easy to say now, but what about in a year, 5 years? When you are still hiding me, still looking over your shoulder, still sacrificing opportunities because being with me is too complicated? How long before you resent what this costs you? The question hit harder because Marcus recognized it. He had watched his parents' love curdle into resentment, had seen how sacrifice could transform into weaponry in arguments. "I am not my father," he said quietly, "and you are not asking me to sacrifice. You are giving me something to actually live for." Before Lyra could respond, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, the message made his blood run cold. "What is it?" Lyra asked, seeing his expression. "Federal agents raided my San Francisco office. They are seizing files, looking for any connection to extraterrestrial contact. My board of directors is being questioned." He scrolled through increasingly frantic messages from his legal team. "They are building a case against me." Lyra's face went pale, her purple skin fading to lavender. "This is my fault. I should never have let you help me." "Stop," Marcus said sharply. "I made my choice. I do not regret it." "You should," Lyra said, tears forming in her eyes. "You should hate me for what I have cost you." Marcus pulled her close, feeling her trembling against him. "Listen to me. I spent 15 years building walls around my heart because I was terrified of being hurt the way my parents hurt each other. I convinced myself that loving someone meant eventual destruction, but you showed me the difference between love that takes and love that gives. You showed me what it meant to actually connect with someone. By destroying your life, Lyra said miserably. By giving it meaning, Marcus corrected. He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. Lyra, if they take everything, my company, my money, my reputation, I will still have gained more than I lost, because I will have known what it means to love someone worth risking everything for. Lyra kissed him then, desperately, as if trying to memorize the feeling. When she pulled away, her expression had shifted to something determined. I know what I need to do, she said. I need to leave Earth. Not forever, but temporarily. Let me return to Thessara and explain the situation to my people. They have been studying Earth for decades. They might be willing to intervene, to make official contact with your government, to legitimize my presence here. Marcus felt hope flare. Can they do that? I do not know, Lyra admitted, but it is the only chance we have. If I stay here, I put you in constant danger. If I leave and never return, we both lose everything. But if I can convince my people to establish formal diplomatic relations, you would not be harboring an illegal alien. You would be hosting an official envoy. It was the first plan that actually made sense, but the thought of her leaving, even temporarily, felt unbearable. How long? Marcus asked. A few months, perhaps. Time travel between our worlds is not instantaneous, and I will need to argue my case before the Council of Observers. They are cautious about direct contact. What if they say no? What if they refuse to help? Lyra's eyes held fierce determination. Then I will return anyway. I will find another way. But I have to try this first, for both of us. That night, they made love with urgent intensity, knowing it might be months before they could touch again. Marcus memorized every inch of her, the way her skin glowed in the darkness, the soft sounds she made, the way she whispered his name like a prayer. Afterwards, Lyra lay in his arms, tracing the lines of his face. I need you to promise me something, she said softly. Anything. If I cannot come back, if my people refuse to help, and returning to Earth means living as a fugitive forever, I want you to move on, build a new life. Do not wait for me. That is the one promise I cannot make, Marcus said firmly. You are it for me, Lyra. I know that now. I have spent 15 years avoiding connection, and now that I have found it, I'm not letting go. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. You are the first person who ever made me want to stay somewhere. Every world I have visited, I have always been ready to leave. But Earth, with you, this is the first place that feels like home. Then we will make it your home, Marcus promised, however long it takes. The next morning, before dawn, they drove to the coordinates where Lyra had hidden her ship. It was concealed in a canyon deep in the mountains, covered with camouflage technology that made it nearly invisible. When Lyra deactivated the cloaking, Marcus got his first look at alien technology. The ship was smaller than he expected, elegant and organic in design, like it had grown rather than been built. It's beautiful, he said. It has been my home for 3 years, but now when I look at it, all I see is the thing taking me away from you. They stood together in the pre-dawn darkness, neither wanting to let go. Come back to me, Marcus said finally. I will, Lyra promised, even if I have to cross the entire galaxy to do it. She kissed him one last time, then pulled away and walked toward her ship. At the entrance, she turned back. Marcus Bennett, she called, thank you for being the first person to see past my strangeness to who I actually am. Lyra, Marcus called back, thank you for teaching me that opening my heart was not weakness. It was the bravest thing I have ever done. She smiled, radiant and beautiful and impossible. Then she entered her ship and the doors sealed behind her. Marcus watched as the vessel powered up, lights glowing along its hull. Then it rose silently into the sky, faster and faster until it was just a point of light among the stars. And Marcus stood alone in the canyon, his heart aching, but somehow full, waiting for the woman who had shown him what it meant to truly live. The next 6 months were the longest of Marcus's life. Federal agents eventually cleared him of criminal charges, unable to prove he had knowingly harbored an alien, but his company's board forced him to step down as CEO. The scandal had made him a liability, despite his innocence. Marcus discovered he didn't care as much as he thought he would. He took a generous severance package and stepped away from the empire he had built, realizing it had always been a beautiful cage of his own making. Instead, he focused on other work. He started consulting for small startups with innovative ideas, using his expertise to help young entrepreneurs build something meaningful. He funded research into sustainable technologies. He even started painting, something he hadn't done since college, finding that art helped him process the ache of missing Lyra. David visited regularly, having been fully cleared of charges. Their relationship, strained for years, had strengthened through shared adversity. "Any word?" David always asked. "Not yet," Marcus always replied, but he never stopped watching the stars. Then, on a clear November night, Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Just coordinates and a time. Tomorrow night. The same canyon where he had watched her leave. Marcus barely slept. He arrived at the canyon hours early, pacing in the darkness, his heart hammering with hope and fear. What if she was coming to say goodbye forever? What if her people had refused? Right on schedule, the sky above the canyon began to glow. But this was not Lyra's small research vessel. This was something massive. A ship the size of a football stadium descended slowly, gracefully, its hull covered with lights that created patterns Marcus recognized from Lyra's skin. It settled into the canyon with impossible delicacy, and a ramp extended from its side. Figures began to emerge, tall beings with purple skin and varying shades, some lavender, like Lyra, others deeper violet or even blue-toned. They wore elegant clothing that seemed to shift colors in the darkness. And at the front of the group, walking down the ramp with her head held high, was Lyra. Marcus Bennett adjusted his tie for the third time, staring at his reflection in the vintage mirror of the Vineyard Estates guest house. At 32, he had built a technology empire worth billions, revolutionized cloud computing infrastructure, and earned a reputation as one of the sharpest minds in Silicon Valley. Yet somehow, he could not figure out how to escape his cousin's wedding without causing a family incident. The invitation had arrived 3 months ago, embossed with gold lettering announcing the marriage of David Chen to someone named Lyra. Marcus had never heard David mention anyone by that name, which was strange considering they had been close growing up. Even stranger, David had been evasive when Marcus asked about his fiancée, offering only vague descriptions and changing the subject quickly. Marcus had tried every excuse to avoid attending. Business trips to Tokyo, urgent meetings in New York, a sudden need to oversee a server migration in Dublin. His assistant, who knew him too well, had systematically dismantled each fabricated conflict, clearing his schedule with ruthless efficiency. Now here he stood in an Italian wool suit, surrounded by the rolling hills of Napa Valley's most exclusive vineyard, preparing to watch two people make what he considered the fundamental mistake of modern life, believing love lasted forever. His parents' divorce when he was 15 had been spectacular in its ugliness. What started as a fairy tale romance between a brilliant architect and a celebrated pianist had devolved into a legal battle so vicious that Marcus spent his teenage years shuttling between lawyers' offices, watching the two people who claimed to love each other destroy one another with calculated precision. The experience had calcified something inside him. He dated, certainly, brief relationships with equally career-focused women who understood that neither party wanted anything permanent. It was clean, honest, and safe. Marcus made his way toward the ceremony space, a beautifully manicured garden overlooking the valley. White chairs faced an arch woven with late-blooming roses and deep purple orchids. The guest list was surprisingly small, maybe 40 people, which was unusual for David's family. The Chens believed in large celebrations with extensive family networks. This intimate gathering felt almost secretive. He found a seat in the back row, already calculating how quickly he could leave after the vows. Show face during the ceremony, congratulate David, plead an urgent business call, and drive back to San Francisco. 3 hours maximum. The string quartet began playing, and guests settled into their seats. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails he had already read twice. Then the music shifted to the processional, and despite himself, Marcus looked up. David appeared first, walking down the aisle with unusual nervousness. His cousin, normally confident and easygoing, looked almost frightened. His eyes kept darting to the guests as if expecting someone to object before the ceremony even began. Then came the bride. Marcus felt his breath catch, which annoyed him. He prided himself on being unaffected by romantic theatrics. But there was something about the way she moved that commanded attention. She was completely veiled, which seemed old-fashioned even for a traditional ceremony. The veil was not the typical sheer fabric that offered teasing glimpses. This was heavy white lace that concealed her entirely, falling from an elaborate headpiece all the way to the ground. Through the layers of fabric, Marcus could barely make out her silhouette. Yet despite being hidden, she moved with extraordinary grace. Her posture was perfectly straight, her steps measured and deliberate. And there was something else. Something that made Marcus lean forward slightly in his chair. Beneath the white lace, he could see hints of color. Purple, fabric, deep lavender that seemed to shimmer when the sunlight caught it. The combination was striking and unusual, white over purple in layers that created an almost ethereal effect. The bride reached the arch, and David took her hands. Even from the back row, Marcus could see his cousin trembling. The officiant, a woman Marcus did not recognize, began the ceremony with standard words about love and commitment. Marcus tried to tune it out, to return his attention to his phone, but found his eyes drawn back to the veiled bride again and again. There was something compelling about her mystery, the way she stood so still and yet seemed to radiate presence. Her hands, clasped with David's, appeared delicate and graceful. The ceremony proceeded through the usual beats. Readings about love, carefully chosen and recited by David's sister. Exchange of vows that David delivered with a shaking voice, while the bride's responses were too quiet for Marcus to hear clearly. The presentation of rings. Then came the moment Marcus had always found most uncomfortable in weddings. The officiant addressed the gathered guests with the traditional words, "If anyone here has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." The garden went absolutely silent. Marcus felt a strange impulse rise in his chest, an inexplicable urge, to stand, to speak, to somehow stop this ceremony. The feeling was so powerful and so irrational that it startled him. He gripped the arms of his chair, forcing himself to remain still. What was wrong with him? He did not even know these people, not really. David was family, but they had drifted apart over the years. And the bride was a complete stranger, hidden behind layers of fabric. The moment passed. The officiant smiled and continued. "Then, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you married. You may kiss your bride." This was it. The moment Marcus had been waiting for so he could leave. He started to stand, ready to slip away during the distraction of the first kiss. But then the bride reached up, her movements slow and deliberate, and began to lift her veil. Marcus found himself frozen, unable to look away, as the white lace rose higher, revealing what had been hidden beneath. And in that moment, everything Marcus Bennett thought he knew about the universe shattered completely.